To close out today's program, we have asked a cross-section of industry leaders to share thoughts on diversity and inclusion and their hopes for the sport moving forward. Following is a series of insights we've compiled to offer a glimpse on how to fix the structural challenges in the esports industry. You'll hear from Christian Connelly of Activision Blizzard Esports, Arnold Herr of Gen G Esports, Nicola Piggott of The Story Mob, Kelsey Rowley of Spectacle Gaming, T1 Entertainment and Sports, and FTW, Kirsten Salvatore of Cloud9, and Meredith Weber of Spectacle Gaming and FTW.
I think there's still a lot of work to be done, even though I think esports in general has been much more welcoming of women when it comes to the business side. So, when we look at a lot of esports teams, they've got a lot of great women leaders. Even for us, our head of marketing, with a ton of experience across the board, she really brings great women leadership, great female leadership into our team across the board. And we've actually, I think I think across the board, we do need to bring more women into the industry. But we also have to recognize that the industry is changing, but it still has a lot of remnants from what the industry used to be like. So I know that sounds really vague, but what I mean by that is, I'll be very honest. When I first came into esports, which was about 3 years ago, I was really shocked coming from places like Google and places like in the tech world that the bar was kind of low when it comes to really embracing diversity. And so the first thing that we did was we said, okay, we really got to install not just junior level talent, which is great, but we also have to set great examples at a senior level. How can we make sure that senior people that are women are able to really show leadership and help us work together to figure out what we need to do to really improve diversity in this space. So I think, there's been a lot in the news around just really unprofessional behavior across the board in gaming. And it's something that we can't ignore. So I think the most important thing that we have to do is recognize that the industry still needs a lot of work, that the bar is really low, but that we have to install strong leaders who can help kind of shape the new future that gaming needs to take in order for it to be successful.
We need great people in every part of this growing business. And I think we're seeing smart organizations make smart choices about putting really smart people in the right roles. Certainly at Cloud9, I feel really good about our trajectory when it comes to women in roles as team managers, as general managers, as heads of departments, and in C-level roles. I think we're moving the right direction, but I think that the smartest organizations are going to remember and take proactive steps toward making sure that there are different perspectives represented at every level of their organization. There's a lot of research that says that that's what makes for more successful companies. So I think that we've taken a step in the right direction, but there's lots more to do there.
On the business side of esports, things are a little more perky. I think there's a reason for that. I'll give credit here to two female CEOs in the space that I know, Nicole LaPointe Jameson of Evil Geniuses and Trisha from FlyQuest, Trisha Shigita. Both come to their senior roles with different types of experience, but both add a lot, not just to the organizations that they represent, but to our scene as a whole. And I think it's symptomatic of the fact that there's a wider pipeline when it comes to broad seniority and business acumen that can be applied to esports. On the competitive side, there's a lot more that's sort of underneath the surface as opposed to pure skill. I believe that women are, somewhere along their journey, either dissuaded, disappointed, or disillusioned with the idea of a career in pro gaming. And I don't believe that as a group that we've been able to identify and solve that. So that's going to take a little bit longer, but I am, really happy with the developments that I see on the business and infrastructure side. I think that there's a ton of, as you would expect in any workplace, there's a ton of gender-based and racial-based diversity.
There's 2 women for every 10 men, I believe, that work on the professional side of esports. My background, I actually started in traditional sports, and it's not all that different. So until we get to a space where there's women at leadership roles across the board in all different sectors of the esports industry, we're going to have a diversity issue. Same goes for our LGBTQ communities, our Black communities, across the spectrum. There needs to be more inclusion and representation at all levels of the organization. But the bright side is that, esports is expanding like crazy. Through COVID, we've seen that esports is one of the very few industries that has really been able to not only survive, but almost thrive.
I think in 2020, we took the sort of first half step toward beginning to address issues of diversity and inclusivity in esports. I think we started openly communicating more about the work our community needs to do if we're going to evolve, which is not just addressing gender imbalance in terms of representation across the industry. It's really looking at whether this incredible thing that we all do, playing games together, this thing that teaches us and connects us and supports us, is really holding us up all in many ways right now. We're at least starting to talk about whether or not we're making sure that experience is genuinely available to as many people as possible.
2020 has been an unpredictable year for a lot of reasons. So I'm going to caveat my answer by saying that I'm sure a lot of groups wish that they could have done things very differently had the whole situation with COVID not progressed in the way that it has. I think that when it comes to gender diversity, racial diversity in the esports space, we've seen a lot of surface level activity, a lot of celebrating of diverse talent.
There's kind of a big space where a lot of teams just weren't investing into the competitive scene, with kind of the excuse that, hey, you know what, if you look at the majority of the competitively focused men out there, players out there, that they're men. But I would actually argue, if you look at the player base, more and more women are coming into the scene every day, and this is probably the fastest area of growth possible. And I think the publishers have begun to understand that. So, we were able to kind of work with the publisher. We were able to work with the platforms like Twitch for some of their tournaments, and be able to really start encouraging that scene to grow. And we've been able to kind of now go from that great beginning where, we've actually had a first ever TwitchCon winner, a female TwitchCon winner in Fortnite, to actually move over and now begin to start a women's Valorant team as well. So I think we're really starting to see the evolution of really trying to work on bringing diversity, not just in the men and women's space, but the other side that we found a really big opportunity was that, when everything was going on across the sports world around diversity, we recognized that, there were a lot of teams coming in, doing a lot when it comes to, let's say, I don't know, doing things on social media or those kind of things, which we thought were good and brought awareness. But we took that as an opportunity to really look inside and say, hey, what can we do that's actually going to be really able to change and impact how much diversity there is in this industry?
2020 was a challenging year, both in esports and worldwide as well. And the entire industry just faced challenges from the pandemic to diversity. And one of the things that we did for the Call of Duty League, as we were opening our home series in Minneapolis, the Minnesota Rocker and the Call of Duty League decided to postpone our home series opening event It was on the heels of George Floyd's death, and it was important for us to give some space for the community to recognize the level of inequality and issues in the country. And when we did come together for that first home series, we took time to remember, recognize, and also just stand together that we don't stand for that level of inequality and issues facing our country. And while that's just one step, we have a long way to go. We're hopeful that we're headed in the right direction of recognizing and speaking and talking about all of this, and hopeful that we can continue to make these small steps forward.
For us at Spectacor Gaming, one of the first steps we took to address a lot of the, diversity and inclusion initiatives that we were faced with was to create a DE&I council, which was comprised of all levels of employees within our organization. And we even tapped into our parent company, Comcast, to lean into some of their expertise in that space. And, the first thing we did was really gather a lot of employee feedback and start internally to see, what sort of steps we could take there. We're now in the process of action planning and beginning to engage with various partners so that we can make some real strides in this space. This week, we had a really big announcement that we're excited about. We've welcomed Andrea Agnew, who is our new VP of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion across the Comcast Spectacor portfolio. So she's going to support not only our gaming division, but also the Philadelphia Flyers and the Wells Fargo Center. So we're really excited to get, continue our work with her and start to, I think across the board, we'll start to see a lot more of the sort of talk that's been happening come to action in 2021.
It's been really exciting with FTW having so many esports orgs, and then just other companies that aren't actually at the forefront of esports want to get involved in things like FTW and support these causes, because it is really important to so many people. And it's also been really exciting from the partnership standpoint for Comcast Spectacor Gaming, how many of the partners that we are working with that aren't, once again, actually involved in esports, but want to partner with us and come to us saying that they're really passionate about inclusivity and diversity, and asking us like how we are going to separate ourselves from the pack and actually be at the forefront of becoming a more diverse and inclusive industry.
I think that there has been some steps forward for sure. And I think that outside things like Black Lives Matters and the stories of gender inequality that we heard in esports earlier this year have certainly given people a shock. I don't think that we've seen the massive stride forward that we would have hoped for at the beginning of the year had the industry not kind of gone into lockdown along with everything else. In the short term, I think that there's a couple of things that we can achieve relatively easily. I would like to see more female voices in the space that aren't specific. I'm aware of the irony, given that we're speaking specifically about diversity, but I would like to see more female voices in the space not speaking specifically about diversity, but speaking to their areas of expertise. Like I said, I think we've done a lot of identifying the problem and leaning on minorities in order to solve it. I also think that there's a ton of reason to be hopeful about some of the things that I know are cooking at various teams when it comes to support of minority-based projects. These things take a little while to put together, but I know that there are projects that are specifically aimed towards getting the resources and support for prospective athletes and just kids with passion that want to get into gaming. And I feel like whether it's monetary support or support with resources, teams can make a massive difference here. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of those being supported in 2021. Also content. We've made some strides this year with an increased diversity of voice across major content platforms. Then is a good example of a network that has really, secured hosts and talent that speak to all levels of diversity. I would like to see much more of that, and that's a relatively easy fix given the wealth of talent that there is in the space that, crosses all levels of the diversity spectrum.
We really have to do more to encourage more and more people to have better role models. in the industry across the board. So, one of the things that we really hope for with even our scholarship is that we're able to create these role models and showcase these role models more often, so that younger people are able to say, hey, you know what, that guy looks like me, I can be this guy, right? Or I can be this girl. So I think those are the two steps that really need to be done. So I think we're starting to make progress at the top layer on the pro level, but I think we got to make more work. More work needs to be done on that second and tier 2 and tier 3 level to create a better ecosystem that can benefit everybody.
I think in 2021, really focusing on the digital space and opening and creating more doors for amateur women gamers and amateur minority gamers to be more involved in competition and actually strengthen their skills to maybe become like top tier competitors one day. I think definitely diving into like the inclusivity in the digital space is really important to focus on for 2021.
The first one for me is access. It just starts from being able to access gaming and esports, both at the community level, so perhaps more donations of PCs and games to communities around the country, to amateur leagues being supported and endorsed to allow more diversity and inclusion, so that when the players get to the professional league, they've had that support along and just have that level of access from the get-go.
The North Star for me is parity, right? Parity of pay for the same or analogous jobs, parity of opportunity, parity of representation of different perspectives. But I think that getting from where we are to there is not a one-step journey, it's a multi-step journey. And so I would like to see leagues and teams start to take more active steps toward getting to parity, because I think that until we can reach a point where we don't have to talk about this anymore, that's not a one-step journey. And so starting to, commit to paying more attention to creating opportunities for parity in all levels of the business, that's what I'd like to see start to happen more openly in 2021.
A big initiative for us in 2020 and going into 2021 as well is to engage and partner with a lot of great organizations that are already doing fantastic work. So we've started to have conversations with HBCUs, Black Girls Code, Black Girl Gamers, Metro Esports, because you really don't want to reinvent the wheel. There's so much great projects already happening that we're really looking to expand our partnerships with some of these organizations and really create pipelines and opportunities for young kids to get into gaming from an early age. I think so much, with COVID, we've seen how the digital divide has really made an impact on how kids are even educated. So, between getting them internet access and computers, that was a hurdle within itself. So to get kids access to the correct gaming tools and platforms that they need to succeed, it's really opened our eyes this year to see how much work we can do in this space and really create more opportunities for kids from a young age to get interested in the esports world.
This is a very short answer. It's really in doing the math. Have we increased representation throughout our organizations of people who are currently underrepresented?
What I would like to see is more content that reflects the female experience, either in competitive games or just in gaming as a whole, that isn't token, that doesn't feel pandering. It was only very recently, and I forget who it was. Perhaps it was, I don't want to name them. I think it was a big show or a big industry body put out a article that claimed that women like playing, like, here's some games that women can play, Candy Crush and what have you, and rightfully so. We were all outraged. It just seemed so retro and such a flashback. And I think we're never going to be able to fully expunge that kind of thinking, but if we have content that reflects our actual experience, the experience of, you know, myself as like a filthy casual, or a female pro as a hardcore player, we'll be able to balance out the landscape a lot better.
It's going to take all of us one day at a time to keep advancing, to stay united, to keep pushing forward. I hope that all of us, whether, you know, we're competitors or not, the esports industry is so special in that everyone does feel that the rising tide lifts all boats. So let's bond together here particularly and really try to work together to take one step forward every day.
A year from now, if we look back and we're able to say that in some way we were able to help close the digital divide that exists in esports and gaming, that will be a win for us. So what I mean when I say that is going into middle schools and high schools and creating programs or after school activities or opportunities for kids to, number one, play video games because they're fun, but also, you know, through those programs to learn about all the different places gaming can bring you in life, and you can have a very, you know, meaningful career in esports. So I think a big goal of ours as we go into 2021 is going to brainstorm, first of all, you know, partners that we can work with to help bring this vision to life. And then, you know, create a sustainable talent pipeline and create opportunities for kids to have internships and mentorships, and, you know, be the next generation of leaders in esports and gaming.
One thing that I really like about esports is how authentic it is, and obviously it's very social and online based, and it's esports fans can really sniff out BS very quickly and they'll call you out for it on social media. So what's been really exciting about being a part of FTW, and I run the FTW social channels, and I think one thing that's really important for progress for what we're discussing is the authenticity and like being genuine and being kind on the internet. And one thing that's been really amazing from running FTW socials has been how factual and calm our fans are when dealing with internet trolls. And I really think that that is something that should be applied to all of esports. So it's been really amazing how we announce an all women's tournament, and obviously we're going to get internet trolls calling us sexist for not permitting men to be in the tournaments. And then someone of the FTW fandom will respond and be like, no, this is not considered sexist because women are oppressed. Men are the oppressor. You cannot be sexist towards an oppressor when you are the oppressed. Like, this is facts. And then it's been really amazing to see these calm and positive conversations developing online and actually changing some people's like minds. And I think that is something that I've learned from the FTW community to actually like apply to all of esports, and to create the awareness and opportunities is to be extremely genuine and to really care about the impacts that you're making with all the decisions that you are making. And I think that FTW and Spectator Gaming have been really successful just in this past year with doing that. And I'm excited to see all the orgs that we work with really join us at the forefront and make this a more safe place for content creators, professional gamers, executive professionals, a whole 360 of inclusivity. I think a long-term diversity goal is to normalize the accomplishments of minorities in esports, and just give minorities in esports more opportunities, because whether you're a woman, whether your sexuality is considered a minority, whether your race is considered a minority, we're making big moves. And every time I see something amazing like Magical gets signed to Cloud9, first all women's Valorant team to get signed to Cloud9, like huge headlines. So proud of them. And it's such big news, but I'm so excited for the day that that's not big news anymore. I'm not like, I wasn't surprised that Magical got signed because they are the 5 top players in Valorant that I've ever seen, and they're going to destroy any all men's team that gets in their way. So I'm really excited as my long-term diversity goal to be embracing the minorities of esports and to give them that spotlight and to give them that foundation to be as successful as possible. But at the end of the day, like my goal is it's normal for women to be the best in esports, and it's normal for minorities to be the prominent faces of different YouTube channels or to be the prominent background of different content teams. So I think just the baby steps to make minorities and women a more normal entity within esports.
I think it really starts with incentives to have the opportunities to want to compete at that level. Being a professional player is challenging, and there's a lot of people on the circuit of all diverse backgrounds that play for fun or maybe in the amateur circuit. But to get to the professional level, you really need to be incentivized to do so and supported. So that is a key challenge to overcome. And I hope that companies and sponsors can provide that assistance and incentivization to compete at the higher level.
I think what we should understand a lot better is how are the behaviors that we treat men and women with early on. How does that disqualify them from thinking about a career in gaming, either as like I said, as a competitor or as a on the back end? I don't think we fully understand that. I would love to see us understand it better. I have some theories. I believe, based on the evidence that I've seen, that women are not as encouraged towards individual achievement. They're rewarded and praised more for cooperative behavior, which doesn't lend itself well in the world of competitive gaming to individual achievement, like I said. So I would like to understand that better and to, start to socialize those ideas with a new generation that are growing up gamers and bringing up their children as gamers, so that we can start to address this problem at its root. We're
at that point in the industry where the industry is recognizing that there is a problem, right? And for the first time, I'm starting to see steps being taken by the industry, by sponsors, by partners, wanting to say, okay, here's a problem. What can we do about it, right? And the next logical step is, okay, here's what we can do about it. How can we actually track and measure our success against it?
Just thinking of diversity and inclusion at every level and across every, intersection of gaming. I'm most excited to see where the content piece goes. I think there's just so many opportunities to intersect, people's passion for gaming with cultural moments. I'd love to see more in the pop culture and I don't know, it's just when you have diverse thought and people that work within an organization from different and varying backgrounds, I think that's when you truly create the best content, because you're consistently learning and discovering, new niches that you might not have known about. So I'm just really excited to see where the content piece goes from here.
I will know that we have made real progress when we're not having women in esports panels anymore. And when we're not having to call out the, we're not having to elevate the idea of women, women in esports roles being something special or unique.